So it's been about 6 months since I was in Japan, and I made my Rolex Watch videos, which were pretty popular actually, and it's given me some opportunity to think about some follow-up content from that trip. You guys left a lot of great questions, and I'm going to attempt to answer some of those frequently asked questions in this video. Spending a couple of weeks in a beautiful, idyllic, sun-drenched location like this gives one the opportunity to think about Rolex watches. This is a very safe place. I've seen lots of tourists wearing their Rolex watches here. You can wear whatever watch you want. Submariner, make sure it's waterproof if you're going to be doing swimming, but you'll be very safe here with your Rolex. Well, hello everybody. This is Watch Fan Henry, and I'm here in one of my favorite relaxation destinations, Martinique in the Caribbean. And yesterday was actually my 60th birthday, and it's been 6 months since I was in Japan, and prepared my videos on my trips to Japan, which generated an incredible amount of reaction and questions. And I was really impressed with the amount of questions and interest that my Japan videos brought. Thanks to all of you for leaving comments, and with some time on my mind to reflect on those videos and those comments, I'm now able to take a few minutes and sit down with you guys and go over some of the questions and answer them. There was a lot of common questions. So with that in mind, I'd like to start with one of the first questions that was asked. Do the shops in Japan, do they ship orders internationally? I believe yes. Some of these shops have presences on eBay. They will ship internationally, but whether you'd want to do that, it's a completely different question. I myself would only advocate going to Japan, seeing the watch yourself in person, and then making the purchase decision that way. I wouldn't advocate buying a watch from Japan overseas. It's just not something I would personally be comfortable with. The next question is, do many of these shops have online businesses? And do they do online business? The answer is yes. I would say probably the vast majority of them have online presences. You could do your own research, do a Google search for example, an Ancano Broadway Rolex shops and see what results you get. I'm sure there'd be quite a number, and that would show you what their inventories are, and you could take it from there. But again, just personally speaking, I wouldn't advocate doing mail order from Japan. The next question or statement or comment is, the watches and prices look very competitive, but how can you tell they are not Franken watches? Well, good question. My answer to that is, first of all, I'm not a Rolex expert. I can't open up a watch and determine really much of anything. I'm a fan, but I'm not a watch repair person, and I certainly can't interpret or decipher the state of a watch by opening up the back of its case. That said, I will say in Japan, they do not have a culture of deceiving people and tricking people. It's just not really part of their culture. It's just how it is. I trust the Japanese people when I go to Japan. I just know that the way the culture works, you could leave your Rolex president on the bus or on the train, and if somebody picked it up, they'd spend a lifetime trying to find you to give your watch back to you. They don't want something which doesn't belong to them. But in terms of the Franken watches, my view is if you shop for a Rolex at a well-established shop in Japan that's been doing business for decades, your chances are very much reduced of buying a Franken watch. And if you are concerned about that, I'm sure that you could basically speak to the seller and say, hey, look, I'd like to have this watch looked at by another seller. Would you mind? Just so that I could have the comfort. You could communicate that and go that route as well. But you do have to be there in person. So it goes back to the very opening question of would you purchase a watch from Japan by mail order? I wouldn't. So, but I hope this answers the question that I personally definitely have the confidence in Japanese sellers. I know they're not tricksters. It's not part of their culture. And if you're so inclined, you could have a watch checked by one of the many other watch shops that you would find in Japan. So I hope that answers that question. Somebody asks, why are the watches cheaper in Japan? A couple of answers to this question. Perhaps the first answer is the Japanese economy. Japan is in a very long-term recession. They went through the Japanese bubble. When was that? In the 80s? Yeah, the real estate bubble. All asset classes in Japan went through a massive bubble, and including real estate, everything. And that bubble burst, and here we are 35 years later, and their economy and the recession is still continuing, recovering from that massive bubble. It was in the media just a few weeks ago that Japan swept from the number 3 spot in the world to the number 4th largest economy. So their economy is actually contracting, and they're actually behind China now, if you can believe that. So the Japanese yen is depressed as a result because of the Japanese economy. The yen is at the lowest point it's been, I believe, ever, perhaps. It's certainly at a 50-year low. The Japanese yen is, 150 to the US dollar, 120 to the Canadian dollar, something like that. So for these reasons, Japanese buyers, people that live in Japan, they have less money to spend on luxury items, including Rolex watches. So the home market is contracted, and those of us coming from overseas with foreign currency, our purchasing power is a lot greater in Japan than what it used to be. And of course, remember, Japan, the Rolex watch is an icon in Japan. So the Japanese people have been buying Rolex watches since the 50s. So there are a huge amount of Rolex watches in the secondary market in Japan, perhaps more so than any other country on the planet. So when you add all these factors together, it just gives the perfect melting point, where you have huge inventory, minimum local demand or reduced local demand, great purchasing power by foreigners such as us, and you're able to get watches at perhaps a better price point than you would at here in North America or in Europe. So another frequently asked question in my Rolex watch videos was, do they have tax-free shopping in Japan? And can you purchase watches tax-free? Great question, and I was finding myself answering this question numerous times in the comments. So here is the answer. Most of the Rolex watch dealers in Japan will have 2 prices posted on the tickets for their watches. One is the tax-free price, and one is the regular price. So if you bring your passport with you to all of these watch shops in Japan, all of these Rolex watch shops, you're going to be able to pay the tax-free price, which is the non-Japanese price. I don't know what the number is. It might be, well, you can have a look at my videos and see what the difference is, but I think it's around 10-15% cheaper than the non-tax-free price. So you would most certainly be buying your watch at the tax-free price. I've always purchased my watches at the tax-free price, but if you are a Japanese resident, you will pay the higher of the posted prices. So yeah, you'll just notice that in almost all my videos and all the tickets that you see for the Rolex watches, the prices are there's 2 prices. So that is an easy answer to that question. Now, you want to carry your passport with you when you're Rolex watch hunting in Japan. So that's a given. So the next question pertains to the fear of purchasing a fake watch. Not a Franken watch, but a fake watch in a Rolex watch in Japan. So somebody said in their comment, I'll be traveling to Japan soon. I'm really having a hard time convincing myself to buy a watch there. Rolex is the most faked luxury item in the world. I pride myself on my ability to study the fakes, and I've caught a couple of dealers in my area trying to sell a super clone as real. So my question is, are all the watches that are for sale in Japan real Rolexes? Okay, good question. A lot of people asked variations of this question, the super fakes. Again, this is a question of your personal comfort level. I guess a few things here. You can purchase a watch from one of the Rolex businesses that have been in business for decades in Japan. That would be a protection. Maybe you purchase a watch that has all the paperwork with it. You can have the watch inspected. You definitely don't want to do mail order unless it's a very much an older watch and has tons of wear on it. But if it's a newer watch, yeah, you don't want to. I wouldn't be doing mail order. But for these reasons and the fact that the Japanese are not, it's not in their psyche to be tricking people. It's not in their psyche for them to be going out and buying super fakes and then remarketing them to unsuspecting tourists. It's just, that's just not Japan. Yes, North America, Europe, the UK, you're going to find shysters all over the place that are going to be able to fit that mold. But in my belief, not in Japan. You really have to understand that the Japanese have terrific pride in what they do. They're a very honorable people. They're not out to derive financial benefit from cheating people by selling super fakes. So I don't have that concern. If you have that concern, then it's maybe best not to purchase a watch in Japan. Only purchase a newer Rolex watch from your authorized dealer, and that's that for you. But for me, personally, I know that I have comfort that I can go to a major Rolex reseller in Japan, and I'm comfortable with the watches that I'm buying there, and I'm fairly confident that I'm not buying a super fake. And again, if you're buying it from one of the major Rolex resellers that have been in business for decades, you're charging it to your credit card, I'd say the chances are reduced, not to zero, but pretty close to zero, that you're not going to be buying a super fake. So the next question pertains to where else you can purchase watches other than Nakano Broadway. I'll read the question to you. The person basically states, I had visited Nakano Broadway again last week. Overall, underwhelming in terms of inventory and pricing, even with the weak Japanese yen. Where else do people purchase pre-owned luxury timepieces in Tokyo? Specifically neo-vintage and vintage pieces over modern references. You're probably going to want to go to one of the chain secondary market watch shops. Quark is the largest of these shops, and Quark has their shops all across Tokyo, and I believe as well in Osaka. And there's a couple of others. Yeah, Betty and Jack Road watches as well. So Quark, Jack Road, and there might be a couple of others. They are huge in terms of being secondary dealers. You might check those, some of their stores out for what you're looking for. But in terms of you're finding the inventory and prices underwhelming, perhaps you haven't been shopping for Rolex watches in Canada, the United States, Europe, or the UK over the last 5 years. Because I find the watch prices in Japan to be very, very impressive. I've bought several watches there as a result. So another one of the frequently asked questions from my Rolex Japan videos is, can you negotiate with the prices when you're shopping for a Rolex in Japan? So my answer to that question is maybe you can, but personally, I'm speaking 100% from personal perspective, it's not something I want to do when I'm in Japan. I believe perhaps you could. It's not part of the Japanese culture to haggle over prices. I mean, you go into a high street in Japan, there's the price, take it or leave it. Yes, I realize you're spending 10, 20, 30,000 bucks on a watch, 2-3 million yen on a watch, but for my personal purchases of my Rolex watches from Japan, I was happy enough with the prices that I did not feel that I needed to haggle on price. So if you go there and you decide that you need to haggle, I'll leave that up to your own personal discretion, and you can let us know how that goes. My gut feel is that the stores there aren't going to be too keen to do that. They're probably going to say take it or leave it. I will say that some of the stores, the Rolex shops at Nakano Broadway, do have a third price. They've got a price for cash. So you've got your price for Japanese residents, you've got your foreigners price, which is the tax-free price, and then you've got the tax-free cash price. Now, when I go to Japan, I don't bring $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in yen. I just want the comfort of being able to plunk down my American Express card and buy the watch. So I don't want the stress of carrying around a huge amount of cash with me on my holiday. Not interested. I'm not interested in saving a few $100s or even whatever. That's just not for me. I'd rather have the comfort in paying for it with my American Express card, knowing that in the remote case, if there is a problem with the watch, then I do have some recourse. Everything's on paper, that the payment was made. So I'm not willing to go down the avenue of making a cash purchase on a Rolex watch just to save a few quid. That's not what I would want to do. But in terms of negotiation, you would have to do that yourself and report back. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's part of the Japanese culture. I wouldn't buy a Rolex watch in Japan unless the price appealed to me. And in the 3 cases so far where I've purchased Rolex watches in Tokyo, the prices were good. There were dealers that I could trust and that I've known that have been in business for a very long time. So I put down my American Express card and purchased the watch. So take that with a grain of salt if you'd like to negotiate when you go to Japan. And yeah, by all means, give it a try. Let me know how that goes. I would be very interested to know how receptive the Japanese are in practice. So good question though. Thank you for asking that. The last of the frequently asked questions for this video pertains to other cities in Japan and their availability of Rolex watches. Now, the question basically is, where else other than Tokyo can you find good selections of Rolex watches? I have only done extensive Rolex watch shopping and Rolex purchasing in Tokyo. I've been to Osaka, but I've not put the legwork in, and I've not investigated whether there are large numbers of secondary Rolex dealers. I'd like to. I'm due back for a visit to Tokyo in one of these coming years, so that's on my to-do list. But if you've been to Osaka and have a report on what that was like for hunting for Rolex watches, would love to hear your summary of that in the comments. Perhaps you could leave a comment to that and let us know. Well, I hope you have enjoyed my Rolex watch hunting FAQ summary filmed here in beautiful Martinique. If you did, I'd appreciate thumbs up. That would be awesome, and look forward to seeing you on my next video. In the meantime, I'm gonna go for a swim. Look at the water, absolutely stunning. Great water for wearing a submariner. See you next time. So that is a number of the popular or frequently asked questions from my Japan Rolex trip about 6 months ago, back in December of 2023. If there are more questions and this video proves popular, I will make another follow-up video to address the frequently asked questions for buying a Rolex in Japan. So I'm not sure I can guarantee this setting for that video, but do feel free to ask in the comments section below. Look forward to reading all of your comments.